So when we think about it, having existed since beginningless lifetimes, and we will continue to take rebirth in samsara. If we reflect on that, if we think about the different reasonings that establish past and future lives, so there's some beings, of course, who remember their past lives. Therefore, in the scriptures, well, in the scriptures you find so many different reasonings. We can think about these, and then also in society we can meet people who do remember their past lives. So when we think about all this, then the concept of past and future lives, what does that actually mean if we think about it? So we get a sense of what this means, and we should really understand what it means. So this consciousness, the consciousness has come from a previous life, and it's taken rebirth in this life and so forth. And we can actually get a good understanding of that if we think about it. This being the case, therefore we've existed since beginningless time, and we will continue to be reborn. So this is one aspect. And then what is the root of all this existence, of our samsaric existence? It's ignorance. So all these problems we have, all our problems, all our sufferings, they come from our own mind. They come from our ignorance, from our ignorant mind. This is how it's explained. When we reflect on this, so from the point of view of just this life, so there's pleasure that comes from the body, there's pleasure that comes from the mind. So pleasure and suffering, there's physical, there's mental suffering and happiness. Therefore, so when we talk about this feeling, when we talk about mental problems, mental feelings, so whether pleasant or unpleasant, so they all come from the mind. And when we're unhappy, for instance, our unhappiness has to do with our mistaken way of thinking, of the mistaken reflection on things. So everything, all our thoughts, they have their root cause and attachment. So first of all, like one of the main afflictions being attachment, so that's one of the root afflictions. And if we reflect on this, and this is being the basis, that everything, all our problems really arise from attachment. So where do our problems come from? Well, first of all, we have this body. Since we've taken a rebirth, therefore we took this body, and therefore having this body, then it's the potential for suffering to arise is ever there. So what is the root cause for taking this body? It is ignorance, it's attachment. So it's these afflictions that give rise to this existence. But if we eliminate the root, of ignorance, then all the other afflictions will be eliminated and suffering will be eliminated. And not just that, whatever dharma there is, whatever phenomenon there is, all phenomena, all impermanent phenomena, the phenomena we see, they all arise from a cause. This is the nature of impermanent things, of the things, the sense objects, whatever we attach to, we can only achieve it, we can only obtain it in connection to causes and conditions, or in independence on causes and conditions. So we need to understand, therefore, that there's a cause for our sufferings. What is the cause of our suffering? Ignorance. Ignorance is a mistaken mind. It's an erroneous mind. So it can be, because it's a mistaken mind, it can be transformed, it can be eliminated. And we cannot rely on this mind. It's mistaken. It's a mistaken mind. A mistaken mind can be transformed into a non-mistaken mind. So this is true for any kind of mistaken mind. So it can be changed, it can be transformed, it can be overcome. That is just the nature of things. That's just the nature of this mind. Therefore, there's a liberation. There's liberation from the afflictions. So liberation is something amazing. But there's something even greater than liberation, which is to work for the benefit of all sentient beings. So while we cycle in cycle existence, we depend on other sentient beings. So this will also be explained in this text later on. So even when we practice the Dharma, we practice the path, we depend on sentient beings. Even when we attain Buddhahood, we depend on sentient beings. It's not like once you become a Buddha, you don't depend on other sentient beings. Even when you're a Buddha, the Buddha's activities, the Buddha's enlightened actions, they're all dependent on other sentient beings. So all his activities, all the activities of a Buddha, they all depend on sentient beings. That being the case, so when we say sentient beings, so sentient beings, we always have to depend on sentient beings from the point of view of this life. So from the time we were born, we had to depend on our parents and of course other beings who our parents depended on, so we depended on them. So we went to school, we went to the elementary school, well, we went to kindergarten, and then we went to elementary school and other schools. So there were so many other people who helped us while we were in school, for instance, the teachers, the students. We had to depend on all of them. So we need a school festival, a school building to go to. And then there needs to be like there'll be people who work in this school. And then once we graduated from school, well, we need to find a job. We need employers. We need colleagues. We need to depend on other people when we work. And when we become older, we then need someone to help us. We need even more support from others. We need hospitals and so forth. So if you think about all sentient beings, well, all our happiness comes from other sentient beings. If we think that, what is the source of all our benefit? So if we look after the source of our benefit, then happiness will. So it makes sense, therefore, if our happiness comes from other sentient beings, that we look after them. Therefore, it's important to work for the benefit of all sentient beings. Our goal should be that, to find lasting happiness, to help sentient beings to find lasting happiness, to help sentient beings to overcome suffering. And that is Buddhahood. So to help sentient beings to reach that state, to give them Buddhahood in that way. So there's no greater benefit we can offer to sentient beings. So this is the real benefit. This is the final benefit we can give to sentient beings. There's no greater benefit that we can offer sentient beings. So of course there are other ways in which we can benefit others. We can give them money or a house and so forth, but that's only temporary. If we give them a house, well, the house will slowly decay, the house will slowly become old, and it won't help them in the long term. And anyway, just giving them a house, we don't know whether the person will really find happiness giving them a house. So the best state we can give them is the state of Buddhahood. That would be the best benefit we could give them to lead, that is to help them to become enlightened. So in order to do this, we first have to become enlightened ourselves. That's why we should have the aspiration, we have to have the wish to become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings. It's actually a consequence from really reflecting on this. It makes sense that we should work towards becoming enlightened. So just understanding the fact that the root cause of all our problems is a wrong mind. If we understand that, then we understand that ignorance can be removed. And when ignorance is removed, then all the other afflictions are removed as well, and there's no longer any suffering. So that's just the nature. That's just the nature of things. It's the nature of ignorance and so forth, that it can be eliminated. And we have the potential to eliminate eliminate ignorance. We also have love and compassion in that continuum, but just very weak love and compassion. So we have the seeds for great love and compassion. Love and compassion, they can grow much greater, and that's just in the nature. That's the nature of our mind. Therefore, it's important to give Buddhahood to other sentient beings, and based on that wish to offer it to others, we should ourselves generate the wish to become enlightened. So unless we have Buddhahood, we've reached Buddhahood ourselves, we won't be able to give it to others. So that should be our motivation here, to generate the aspiration to become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings. And the method, so there are different methods to attain enlightenment. So we need to know about this, and to know the different methods, how we should practice. We study this text. We study the commentary of the Awakening Mind. So this should be your motivation for continuing to study this text. So where did we get to yesterday? Was it 42? What verse did we get to? I think it was 42.
Yeah, thank you.
So then it goes on to say, so emptiness, when we say emptiness, what is emptiness? So selflessness, subtle selflessness, the final mode of existence. Entity is for conceptualization. Absence of conceptualization is emptiness. Where conceptualization occurs, how can there be emptiness? So here, entity is a conceptualization. Here we talk about entity as its inherent existence. So this is a computer, this is a cup. So something, a vessel to drink tea from. So it's like perceiving it as existing by way of its own character. So whatever we recognize from the perspective of our mind, it exists. It's actually just fabricated by the mind. It's superimposed by the mind. So for instance, so there are different ways in which we superimpose things. So when we say I, so actually the I is actually dependent on the 5 aggregates, but sometimes it seems that the I is the body, sometimes it seems the I is the mind, sometimes the I is the... So actually we maybe merely label the I. We label it sometimes on the basis on the body, we label it on the basis of the mind, we label it on the basis of feeling. So actually the self is merely labeled. So for instance, when we say, oh, this person is really strong, it's really big, a big kind of strong person, so corpulent, like a fat person, for instance, or a thin person for that matter. So we label this person on the basis of their body, or like a happy person. So the person is really happy. This is a happy person. So this is on the basis of their feeling. On the basis of their feeling, we label happy person. Or when they have a lot of problems, on the basis again on the feeling of suffering, we label that this is an unhappy person who has a lot of problems. And if someone is an expert, someone is really well educated or has a good heart, so all these labels, these designations, they all depend on certain mental factors. So the mental factors of the compositional factor. So here, wisdom, intelligence, of the 55 mental factors. Here, this is part of the aggregate of compositional factor. Therefore, it's on the basis of the compositional factor what we label the person as intelligent and so forth. Or on the basis of the mind, well, when we even if the person is pretty, but what is their mind? Maybe the external appearance is very pleasant, but what about their mind? Well, if they have a negative mind, if they have the bad mind, so externally they may look really nice, but we distinguish between the external and the internal. So the external is like a skin. The external is like that's not most important, really. Most important is the mind. Who this person really is. We check out the mind. Yeah, maybe they look handsome, they're beautiful from the outside, but actually they're not a good person. So because their mind is mean, their mind is not, they don't have a good mind. So that's how we label usually, or someone who can sing really well, who is a singer, or someone who, so when we say umze, like a chanting master, so it's dependent on their voice, and someone who can dance. So when we say this is a dancer, then it's dependent again on the body, on their movements. Therefore, so whatever we label, so when we say there's an expert, there's a scholar. So when we say this expert, this person who's an expert, it's in the, so what is the basis for labeling, for designating that? If we analyze and check what is it that if we were to check what is the basis of imputation here, or the basis for designating. So it's exactly this. It seems there's something we can actually, something solid, something concrete. It seems that there's something concrete that is that expertness and so forth. That's just an appearance, actually. So this is just created by the mind. So here it says entity is a conceptualization, absence of conceptualization. So this fabrication is emptiness. We need to be free from these mistaken conceptualizations, and that is emptiness. So here when we say conceptualization, here we're talking about, we don't talk about attachment and anger and so forth. So for instance, this is not what this means here in this context. Here, conceptualization refers to, it doesn't just mean to wrong kind of perception, but it specifically refers to holding on to true existence, perceiving phenomena to exist inherently by way of their own character, by way existing in and of itself, as if able to sustain themselves. So this kind of conceptualization, this is what is meant here. So whatever object there is, so when we conceptualize, when we fabricate things in such a way, so the absence of that is emptiness. Where conceptualization occurs, how can there be emptiness? So here, conceptualization, so kind of superimposing things. We superimpose things. So when we say I don't exist inherently, there's a sense my aggregates exist inherently. So it seems like the aggregates, for instance, I can touch my body, I can see my body. So there's a sense my body truly exists inherently. This is how it appears to my mind. That being the case, so when we say there's no self, I don't exist inherently, but I have a form body. I have a body. I have a form aggregate. But then again, then I'm not able to really understand the final nature, the ultimate nature of phenomena, the ultimate nature of all phenomena. When I understand emptiness, then the conceptualization, these mistaken conceptualizations, all have to be gone. So I come to the conclusion: I can't find the self. I can't find the body. So if I have a sense, oh, the body can be found, upon ultimate analysis, then I won't be able to really understand emptiness. Therefore, so when the things we see, the objects that appear to us, all these objects, do they exist intrinsically or not? So, well, the Buddha has attained enlightenment. He's our teacher, he's our guide, he's the one who shows us the path, very precious and so forth. there's a sense that the Buddha exists inherently. So that appears to our mind as if the Buddha were inherently objectively existent. That's again wrong, because when we have that sense, we haven't fully understand emptiness. Therefore, when it comes to emptiness, we need to understand the meaning of emptiness. So here, absence of conceptualization is emptiness. So here, to understand the ultimate nature of phenomena, to understand it. So how? So no matter what phenomenon there is, we should understand that doesn't exist inherently either. This one doesn't exist inherently, and so forth. So phenomena cannot be found upon ultimate analysis. So they're not found. They can't exist inherently. They don't exist inherently. They don't exist in and of themselves. We have to have the sense with regard to all phenomena. So once we're able to do that, then we really understand emptiness. We can really grasp emptiness. So this is the actual measure of emptiness, understanding that this is true for all phenomena. So therefore, how can there be emptiness unless when there's a conceptualization occurs? So there are a lot of explanation when it comes to emptiness. So at that time here, when we go through this, we have to explain a lot here, and many of you are probably familiar with emptiness. So here, what is the object of negation? The object of negation is that that there's no existence from the side of the object, and this non-existence, that is the view of emptiness. That is the ultimate view, that phenomena do not exist from their own side. We're not saying that everything is non-existent. We don't say all phenomena are the object of negation. That would mean that I don't exist. There's no protector. You don't exist. There's no path to meditate on. There's no Bodhicitta. There's no Buddha. There's no Buddhahood. So if we were to say all phenomena are the object of negation, then what we're going to meditate on? Then there's nothing to practice. There's nothing left to practice. Therefore, we have to think in a very profound way about this. Then it says, the mind in terms of the perceived and perceiver. This the Tathagatas have never seen. Where there's the perceived and perceiver, there's no enlightenment. So this is similar to what it said before here, perceiver and perceived. When it says perceived and perceiver, so maybe this could be interpreted from the point of view of the Chittamatra school, so that one is the perceived, that in relation to the same thing, something is the perceiver and the perceived. So like the self-knower, for instance, it could be interpreted to mean this. So if something perceives itself, then it has to exist truly. Or we could say perceiver and perceived here. Here, the perceiver is a mistaken mind. So perceiving phenomena to exist inherently. So to perceive that which is being used as, or the object that is used to exist inherently, exists by way of its own character and so forth. So here we're saying that which is perceived, perceiver, so perceiving something as inherently existent. So in the case of, for instance, grasping at true existence. So this the Tathagatas have never seen. So the Tathagatas don't see this. They're free from this kind of mistaken perceiver, since it's not in accordance with reality. So this is the kind of temporary obscurations that a Buddha has eliminated. So these obstructions have been eliminated. Where there is perceived and perceiver, there's no enlightenment. So whenever there's when there's a mistaken appearance, whether the mind is mistaken or the object is mistaken, there's no enlightenment. Enlightenment means a state where everything is purified. So what is emptiness actually? So when we say perceiver and perceived, saying that they have to exist separately. So when all the conventional phenomena appear, what is this emptiness? So can we say that emptiness can be realized directly? So what is this emptiness? What is the actual meaning when we say emptiness? What is this emptiness? So we need to immerse our mind into this emptiness. So like as if it was water, like we immerse ourselves in the water of emptiness. So it says devoid of characteristics, no origination, devoid of substantive reality and transcending speech. That's what it says in verse 46. So when we say different objects, for instance, a pen or other objects, so none of those exist inherently. So it doesn't exist from its own side. There's nothing to really point at something concrete as being its essence. So devoid of substantive reality and transcending speech. So being of what is if the Rinpoche is saying, like, what does it really mean here? The Tibetan Yongyurmayin. So like devoid of substantive reality. So does it mean like, so how can we actually recognize something here? So nothing can be recognized from the side of the object. So that's probably what it means, that it doesn't exist in and of itself. So space, awakening mind, and so forth. So anyway, emptiness cannot be expressed the way it exists, actually. So it's like it transcends speech, for instance. So actually, in the place of reasoning, it says, of course, in the place of reasoning, it talks about that actually emptiness can be spoken of. So when we say, for instance, conceptual mind or conceptual mind, so emptiness on the basis of our understanding of the conceptual mind, we can talk about it, but it won't be the same experience. But it won't be exactly, it's impossible that speech exactly expresses what emptiness is. We can have a coarse sense of what emptiness is, and on that basis talk about it. So it's impossible that we can actually see it as clearly as we would see like a clear fruit on the palm of our hand. So in that sense, we cannot see it exactly the way it exists. Therefore, when we say emptiness, so whatever emptiness means to us, like kind of a core sense of emptiness that we have, that we can actually talk about. We can indirectly talk about emptiness. We can never really express it exactly the way it does exist. It's impossible for speech. So this is not just true for emptiness. Anything that we've experienced directly, even for instance, if we eat something sweet, if we eat a sweet object, so like a candy, for instance, for someone who's never eaten a candy, has never eaten a sweet candy, how do you explain what sweetness is? For someone who's they've never eaten anything sweet. So for someone who's never eaten sweet, how do you explain sweetness? If you want to explain to them there is something that is sweet, what are you going to tell them? So it's very difficult to describe with your own words, to describe what sweetness is. So in the end, all we can say is like, eat it, and then you know what I'm talking about. Similarly with emptiness. So with emptiness, well, it's even more difficult when it comes to emptiness. So through speech, through reasoning our words, it's very difficult to actually put it into words and really explain it. So when we say, for instance, in the Heart Sutra, in the Heart Sutra, we say it cannot be expressed, it's beyond thought. So in the praise to the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, it says, for instance, it's beyond thought, it's beyond expression, and so forth. So to really understand, when we talk about emptiness, so we can say it just appears. So should we say, for instance, the person just appears. So from the top of our head all the way to the soles of our feet. So there's nothing from this side of the aggregates. It seems that there's something really from the side of the aggregates. There seems to be something there, something existing by way of its own character, something that is self-sustained. It seems like somewhere within this body there's the self. But actually that cannot be found. So this non-existence is selflessness. But is this self totally non-existent? So actually, really, we should have to say there's no self. There's nothing to really point at. There's nothing to point at. So actually, we have to say it's not there. But there's a difference between saying analyzing and not finding it and not being there. There's a difference. So not being able to find it, not being there because we analyzed it, couldn't find it. but actually we're just saying, we didn't say that. There's a difference between saying, I didn't find it with ultimate analysis, but we didn't find its non-existence. So there's a difference here. So it cannot be found upon ultimate analysis. If we apply ultimate analysis, we can't find it, but we're not finding its non-existence. That's the difference. Not finding it versus finding its non-existence. So for instance, our eye consciousness cannot hear sound. Can our eye consciousness perceive sound? No, it can't perceive sound. Can our ear consciousness, can it hear color and shapes? But does our eye consciousness perceive the non-existence of sound? No, that's not the case. If the eye consciousness were to realize, if we were to realize the non-existence of sound, then sound wouldn't exist. But here, what we're saying, we're not saying that we find the non-existence of something. We just don't find phenomena. And this is not true for the eye. This is true for all phenomena, for the body, for all phenomena. All the phenomena that we see, none of them can be found. So to give an example here, the body or the computer. So when we analyze it, when we take it apart, basically, when we engage in ultimate analysis, when we look for it among its bases of imputation. So what is the computer? What makes it a computer? So having these characteristics, so then it's a computer. So there's so many different computers nowadays. So we can't say it has to have a certain shape. So need to having a keyboard, it has to have a keyboard, it has to be, we can use the internet with it. So then even our phone becomes a computer. So okay, so let's say there's something that is both a computer and a mobile. But what does it mean that? So it seems like the computer has like a brain. It's almost like there's a mechanic brain in it. There's something. So what is the computer? Is this the computer? This brain inside it? So that itself doesn't really perform the function of a computer. You need more than that. So this computer brain. So it doesn't just, we need to do more. We need to be able to type things, documents, to be able to enter them into the computer, to upload things, download things, and so forth. So just this internal aspect, this internal brain, as Rinpoche calls it, mechanical brain, that is not sufficient. So therefore, so there are different levels to that. So first, so when it was first made, for instance, the first technical kind of things that were part of the computer, how much do you need to add when you put the computer together? When does it become a computer or not? What is it exactly that is needed? So in short, what is it exactly that makes a computer? So when we analyze, so it becomes clear that phenomena of faults, that when we say computer, so when we start analyzing, the more we look for the computer, the clearer it becomes that it cannot be found. So that's a sign, that shows that it doesn't exist truly, because if it existed truly, the moment we look for it, it should become clearer what a computer is exactly. So what does it really mean to be a computer? Or what about the human brain? Is that a computer? So is the human brain a computer? So a lot of functions that a computer performs, we have as well. And of course, a lot of things that a computer can't do, we can do, our brain can do. So because, well, we were humans made the computer. So it's not like the computer made humans, it's the other way around. That means there's a lot of things we can do that a computer can't do. Therefore, if we analyze, it's very difficult to really say, to determine what is a computer or not. So for instance, this world, the situation in this world. So can we take on all these different objects in this world? So actually, with regard to some people, this is not a computer. So we can't really we can't know all the things. So we don't have clairvoyance. So if we had clairvoyance, if we're able to know everything. So independence on a certain person. So this person doesn't need a computer. If they know everything, if they can do everything, if they have the super brain, they wouldn't need a computer. So it depends on that person. So independence on that, is that really a computer? So, for instance, so there are many different, so it's helpful to posit a lot of examples. Sometimes it becomes clearer. So sometimes there's wind. So when the walls of this building, they stop the wind. So it actually benefits us that the wind doesn't come through the walls. So when we close the window, when we close the doors, so we're protected from the wind. So also when we close everything, then no thieves can come. But if they could go through the wall, if there was someone who could walk through walls, so then we can't stop this person. We can't stop this person. So there's nothing to stop them. So independence in relation to that person, if it can walk through walls, then in relation to that person, this is not a lock. So a lock on the window, for instance, doesn't become a lock in relation to that person if they could just walk through it. Or there's no way for them. They're not stopped by such a wall. So in relation to that person, we don't say that this is like a lock, for instance. So for instance, Wi-Fi can actually come through the wall. So it's actually, this is not something that stops us. So it's not like an object of obstruction for the Wi-Fi, for the waves, or she talks about waves of the Wi-Fi. So there's nothing that obstructs it. Therefore, so in relation to these, to the Wi-Fi, it is not obstructed. So being obstructed or not, it's dependent on something else. So this is true for other things. This is also true for a computer. For the person who uses this object as a computer, it becomes a computer. So someone who can use it. So someone who needs to use it, wants to use it. So someone who needs to use it. So there's a certain job that this person is doing, a certain work they're doing. So then independence on that person, we can say it's a computer, isn't it? So if this person doesn't need this computer, so if it has no connection to that person, so then it's not a computer for that person. So in that sense, it needs something else in relation to which is such and such. So with regard to all phenomena, when we analyze phenomena, there's nothing that we can really point at saying that it doesn't exist in relation to something else. So you're in this, so you're in this abbey. In the abbey, you're all vegetarian. So when I say, so actually a vegetarian, it's actually not good to talk about eating meat in a place where you're vegetarian. But I was just thinking, when they say meat, what is meat actually? What are we calling meat? So all the body of an animal, is every body of an animal, is it meat? So actually this is meat. Our body is meat. So I'm saying, so actually it's okay, we say it's meat, this is all right, we don't have a problem with it, if we always say, of course. But for some insects, so these insects that look like, so they look like they look like, for instance, they look like a leaf from a tree, for instance. So, or they look like a piece of wood, these insects. Are they meat? So these insects that look like sticks, little sticks, are they meat? So being meat or not, if we analyze it, it's difficult to determine what is meat. There's so many different types of meat. So the meat of a fish, for instance, of all the different fish in an ocean. So there's so many different animals, so many different types. Some animals that look like flowers, some they look like mucus, some they look like grass. There's so many different. So are they meat or not? And some animals don't have blood, for instance. So there's only like a white substance coming out of their body. So is it blood or not? Is it meat or not? What is blood anyway? So it's all independence on other things. It's very difficult to determine exactly what something is and what it's not. So when we analyze it, we don't really find anything from the side of the object. Space, awakening mind, and enlightenment. No, space, awakening mind, and enlightenment possess the characteristics of non-duality. So here, space is what we usually think of space, and then awakening mind. The awakening mind is the mind, the mind of bodhicitta in the continuum of a bodhisattva, and then enlightenment, that's the resultant mind. So when we talk about the basis, the path, and the result, well, none of those can be found. So here when we say the basis, so the objects that we see around us, they are the basis. So here space is just an example, but everything else around us, all these objects that we can see around us, the sense objects, they're all a basis. So on that basis, we then meditate on the path. So like the awakening mind, and then and dependence on that, we attain enlightenment. So none of those can be found. So whether it's samsara or nirvana, none of them can be found. There's no difference in terms of these two not being findable. So they're not actually they're non-dual. We talk about non-duality here when it comes, or good and bad. They're really not separate. Virtue and non-virtue, they're also like non-dual in the sense they're not really different from the point of view of not being able to find them. So what does that really mean? So we don't say that negative karma is positive karma. So when we say a negative path or a harmful path is not a beneficial path. So if a harmful path were a beneficial path, we would have already become enlightened. Or when the negative karma were a positive karma, no, that doesn't make sense. So no one is saying that. But here, from the point of view, when we say that the basis, path, and result, there's no difference between them. So here, no difference, like Rinpoche used the word in Tibetan for non-duality. So there's really no difference between them. This is what Rinpoche is saying. So it's a little difficult to understand that. But it's definitely very beneficial when we talk about this. For instance, so when we talk about emptiness from the point of view of emptiness, samsara and nirvana are non-dual. Not just that, but for instance, the conventional bodhicitta, so love, compassion, equanimity, the awakening mind, bodhicitta. So bodhicitta, that is characterized by two types of aspiration. So the wish to become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings. When we have this attitude, so the conventional bodhicitta, so that perceives all sentient beings as equally. So this conventional mind. So with regard to enlightenment, with regard to the path that is practiced in all sentient beings, so it's all equal. So equal in that sense. So no matter, it doesn't matter who this person is. So whether this person is poor or whether this person has a high status or not, our view with regard to sentient being is totally impartial. It's all, we have the same attitude. So our mind becomes very vast. So it has like a similar attitude when it comes to all sentient beings, like having this view that they're all equal. So whether someone pays us a lot of compliments or not, or criticizes us, it doesn't matter. So we perceive enlightenment, that's what we wish to, that's what we aspire to. So because it's precious, it's only like we have, it's like we have respect for the Buddha, but just because the Buddha is precious, it's not because of attachment and so forth. So for a practitioner, the Buddha is precious only because of the incredible qualities, but not due to attachment. So actually, if you have this attitude of bodhicitta, for all sentient beings, you wish to benefit all sentient beings. So actually, of course, sentient being and Buddhas are not the same. One is a being of samsara, so samsaric being another person. The other person has attained liberation, has attained Buddhahood. So they're not the same. But actually, the attitude is that they're equal. Equal. Both are extremely precious. We need to depend on both of them, the samsaric being and the Buddha. So they're extremely kind to us. They are the same as not wanting to suffer and wanting to be happy. So one of them has attachment, is free from attachment. The other one has attachment. So just because a person is poor, we don't need to have aversion towards them. So even if they make a mistake, there's no reason to be angry with them. We need to help them rather. So in the end, they can become a Buddha. Therefore, if our mind is impartial, then we see all sentient beings as equal. And this is so here from a conventional point of view, here we're saying that samsara and nirvana are equal. Here we can talk about them being equal in the sense we see all sentient beings as equal in that sense. There's also something else that's important, but I don't remember it right now from what she says. So when we talk about emptiness, so when we say enlightenment is very precious, but it doesn't exist inherently. It cannot be found. Of an ultimate analysis, it cannot be found. So the Buddha's mind, the Buddha's consciousness, they are all impermanent. So it doesn't change into something else. There's no course impermanence in that sense. It's not like the Buddha loses his qualities. No, but it's still the subtle impermanence still applies to a Buddha. Therefore, when it's the Buddha, for instance, the Buddha doesn't exist inherently. Sentient beings don't exist inherently. So in that way, they're equal. Buddhas and sentient beings lack inherent existence. Likewise, nirvana and samsara, they're equal in that they lack inherent existence. Therefore, so when we say actually enlightenment or nirvana and samsara, it's not that far from each other. So in our mind, if there are no afflictions, then there's nirvana. If the afflictions are gone, if the afflictions are there, we say a sentient being, we say samsara. So it's really just about having certain obstructions or not having these obstructions. On the basis of that, we say liberation and nirvana, liberation and samsara. So it seems like it's really far away, like, oh, samsara is over there, it's somewhere in Asia, and liberation is somewhere in the West. So like you have to take a plane to be able to get from one to the other. But it's not like that. So once the obstructions in our mind are gone, then we attain liberation, we attain Buddhahood. And if they're there, then we're in samsara. It doesn't matter where you are, whether you're in the States or we're in China. If you have the afflictions, you're in samsara. So that's what it says in verse 46. So space, awakening, mind, and enlightenment possess the characteristics of non-duality. So here, this non-duality, here we're talking about emptiness. So our mind, when we remove the defilements, so it's important first with the coarse afflictions. We should start with the coarse afflictions. We won't be able to reduce the subtle afflictions right away. That's impossible. We start with the coarser ones. So we start fast. We have to start somewhere, so we start with the coarser ones. Then 47. No. So likewise, So in our mind, we have a strong attachment. So we have the definement of attachment. So especially we have attachment towards ourselves, attachment to ourselves. So this kind of attachment, it holds onto, it binds us. It binds us to, the attachment binds us to the self. So this has to do with our mind. Our mind, it only has to do with our attitude. So it's not like something else that binds us. So it's not like that they can protect us, someone else can protect us. It's only our mind. So it actually, this binding us, it doesn't help us. Actually, the thing is, it seems to benefit us, but actually our mind being so attached, being bound to the I, it seems it's actually, we can't let go of this attachment, but it doesn't benefit us at all. So our mind is just holding on. In reality, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't benefit us at all, this holding on to. What benefits us? What is it that benefits us? So what does it really benefit us? Our right thoughts, correct thoughts that are in accordance with reality. So if these thoughts, based on these thoughts, if we act accordingly, so that's what really helps us. If we have thoughts, if we have a mind that's in accordance with reality, and we act on the basis of that mind, that's what really benefits us. This attachment doesn't benefit us. I'm so precious. This mind, I'm so precious. If I just consider myself to be so precious, so only when I see my good qualities, I never think of good qualities. I never think of negative qualities. So there's a sense I only have good qualities. So I'm so precious, the sense of being so precious. So without being able to look or kind of ignoring any kind of negative qualities, then no one is allowed to be angry. So we have a sense that we're being so humiliated by this other person. That's just because of attachment. If someone treats us if someone treats us in a way we don't like, for instance, this cup, if I'm really attached to this cup, if I were in my bed right now and I worry about this cup the whole time, I'm thinking, oh, this cup, what is happening to this cup? I'm just thinking about this cup. So will this protect this cup? No, it won't protect the cup. So if I really want to protect this cup, I put it in a special place. So maybe in some iron cabinet, I lock the cabinet, or I will appoint someone to protect my cup. So I give you some money to protect. Every month you get some money to look after my cup. So then you can really protect the cup. So what really protects the cup? It's not the attachment. So really actively, if we actively do something, so we have to really engage in some kind of protective actions. So just having attachment doesn't protect the cup. So here when we say, so actually it gives us just a hard time if we have, so not only does it not protect the cup, but it just gives us a really hard time. Like we're worried. I'm worrying that someone will break it, someone will steal my cup. We're always worried about this cup. Or that I will just lose it to someone. So if I don't see the cup, so then I'll always be worried. I'll be always worried about if I can't see the cup, I'm thinking about it, I can't sleep at night. So this is what attachment does. Attachment does, it causes so many problems. So attachment, we have to understand the nature of attachment. So we're having the sense this is really precious, this cup is really precious, so I have to look after it. So that's not attachment. Saying that something is precious and I have to look after it, but attachment is this extreme mind. Why am I saying this? So when we have attachment, So it's important to let go the attachment to the self. If we're so attached to ourselves, if we think I, so if we always think about I, so what does it help us? And what does it benefit us? Well, it benefits us if we study, if we look after our health. That's what really helps us. But there's nothing more we can do. So then we can relax and we can sleep well. So without this attachment, we can sleep well, we can eat food well, we can look after our health, we can study, we can respect others, have a good relationship with others. So only that is possible. That's what really protects us. That's what's important. So this is what really benefits the self. But this attachment, we have to let go of the attachment, this defilement, this defiled mind, which is attachment. If we can let go of that, then we will really be happy. Then we can really experience happiness. Our mind will be relaxed. So this is like a similar to liberation. It's of course not liberation, but it has the similarity, like to liberation. We're kind of liberated. There's a sense of freedom. So it's not actual liberation, not actual freedom, but it's similar to it in the sense that it's similar. There's some similarity. So how beneficial is that? Just this freedom of attachment. And of course, how much greater is it when we have liberation? I mean, it's so much greater, actually. So in that sense, this is what it says here. The last line of 46, possess the characteristics of non-duality. So it's just a matter of attitude here when it comes to samsara and nirvana. So we have to just change our attitude. Then 47, those abiding in the heart of enlightenment, such as the Buddhas, the great beings, and all the great compassionate ones, always understand emptiness to be like space. So here, the compassionate ones, so Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, so they all have, when it comes to emptiness, it's like space. They always understand emptiness to be like space. So emptiness is like the absence of obstructive contact. So here, when we say emptiness, it's just the absence of something. So when we say all phenomena, it's not like saying that all phenomena don't exist, but we're saying it's like space in the sense that it pervades everything. Therefore, it's like empty space and emptiness have some similarities. So first of all, space cannot be it's non-obstructed. So it has no limit. It has no limit. So we can go endlessly. So there's no kind of end to space. So even if we had a plane, we could go on endlessly, actually, because there's no end to space. 48. Therefore, constantly meditate on this emptiness, the basis of all phenomena, tranquil and illusion-like, groundless and destroyer of existence. So the basis of all phenomena, so in the Chitta Madras school, they say it's the foundation of consciousness. So they say this kind of mind doesn't exist. There's no truly existent mind. So this is like it's illusion-like. It doesn't exist. So meditate on this emptiness, the basis of all phenomena. Then it says, as non-origination and as emptiness. The basis of... So nothing can be found. There's nothing truly there. So emptiness, understanding emptiness, therefore we can overcome existence. We can become liberated from existence, from samsara. So the basis of a phenomenon, tranquil illusion, like groundless and destroyer of cyclic existence. That's what destroys. It destroys cyclic existence. Is this groundless. 49, as non-origination and as emptiness. So what is emptiness? Emptiness refers to all phenomena. It can be applied to all sentences and all phenomena. They're non-originated. So they're free from all kind of mistakes. Once you understand emptiness, so free from any kind of mistaken appearance and so forth. That's what we say is emptiness. We're not talking about, we're saying that being free from any kind of conceptualization, that's emptiness. Or as no self-grasping at emptiness as such. So here, here it talks about member as in like a lesser truth. So like he will meditate on a lesser truth. So it's important that we really meditate on the actual truth. So we say that the member as in like inferior, so it's an inferior truth. So in the Vaibhashika and the Sautrantika school, they don't perceive the actual truth. They don't meditate on the actual truth. They only meditate on a coarse kind of selflessness. And also the Chitta Mantra school follow a lesser truth. They are only meditating on the lack of external phenomena. Therefore, we have to meditate not on a lesser truth. It's only a part of the truth. It's only an aspect of the truth. That would be a lesser truth. That would be an inferior truth. That is not true meditation. We don't talk about emptiness. So it's not enough to just meditate on that. I thought it was already 10 o'clock, she said. The notions of virtue and non-virtue characterized by being momentary and disintegrated. The Buddha has spoken of their emptiness. Other than this, no emptiness is held. So when we say emptiness, so whether it's notions of virtue or non-virtue, the Buddha has spoken of their emptiness, so that's free from. So when we realize emptiness, all these phenomena disappear. None of these phenomena appear to the mind. So the mind is non-dual. Once you realize emptiness directly, the conventional appearances, they disappear. Only what appears, I mean, the meaning generality doesn't appear, the generic image doesn't appear. Also, subject and object don't appear as distant. So none of these dual appearances arise. So when we say conceptualization, like a conceptual mind, for instance, is not a direct perceiver. So it doesn't perceive phenomena as it really is. Here we're talking about direct perception of emptiness. So a direct realization of emptiness. So what is the actual meaning of emptiness? So when you realize it directly, what is emptiness? You really understand emptiness, then all appearances will disappear. So all these different appearances, then the mind will become non-dual. So the mind itself will be free from any kind of dualism, will be free from any kind of appearances, such as in the appearance of inherent existence or conventional truth. So this emptiness that appears to the mind is free from all mistaken appearances. So the mind perceives phenomena as it really is. So this realization of emptiness, this is what emptiness is. This is what the Buddha talked about when it comes to emptiness. No other perception of emptiness other than the direct realization of emptiness perceives emptiness as it really is. So, for instance, as the Svatantrika school describes it, the way the Chittamatra school describes it, that's not emptiness. That's not really emptiness. Other than this, no emptiness is held here. So in the Svatantrika school doesn't talk about the lack of inherent existence. They assert inherent existence. And the Chittamatra school, they perceive the mind to exist truly. And the Vaibhashika and the Svatantrika school, they only refute a coarse kind of self. They only perceive a coarse kind of selflessness. They don't perceive any kind of ultimate nature with regard to other phenomena. So in that way, they don't perceive emptiness. 51. The abiding of a mind which has no object is defined as the characteristic of space. So they accept that meditation on emptiness is in fact a meditation on space. So when we say abiding of a mind that has no object here, so the mind that realizes emptiness, it perceives emptiness. So it's a non-affirming negation that just takes emptiness to mind. So when we look at the sky, for instance, so when we say we're not saying the blue sky, the blue space. That's not what space is. It's got a color. Here we talk about permanent space, which is just defined by which is defined as that which is free from any kind of obstructive contact. So it's just that non-affirming negation. You just negate the obstructive contact, just that being that absence of obstructive contact. That's what we call space. So when this appears to the mind, that's when this permanent space appears. So this mind, the object of the mind, the object of that mind, in that case, it's not that you can say, oh, the object is this or that or something else. It's not. So there's no sense. When we, for instance, realize emptiness directly, there's no object appearing in the sense as this or that or something else, but it's rather just the absence of inherent existence. So the mind, it's kind of immersed in that mere absence. So it's like this, it's immersed in the sphere of the mere empty. So the mind doesn't think, oh, it is empty. It doesn't think, oh, this is emptiness. It doesn't have that thought. It doesn't, there's no sense of, oh, there's the lack of inherent existence. It's just totally immersed in that emptiness. So it's just, there's just the mere absence, nothing there, nothing else appears. So what appears to the mind? Just the lack of inherent existence. So just that absence appears. Just that absence, nothing else appears. Only that appears to the mind. But the mind is not thinking, oh, this non-existence doesn't exist or doesn't have any other thoughts than that. So it's just like space. It's like this lack of obstructive contact where just this absence is perceived. So they accept that meditation on emptiness is in fact a meditation on space. So it's like meditating on space. So this is what the Buddha has said. So this is how we should meditate. This is how the Buddha described the meditation on emptiness. So when we think about then the emptiness appears, for instance. So a person, for instance, when they come to this room, if there's a cat in this room, for instance, so if I were to say, please take out the cat, someone says, okay. So you come up this stairway, and then you follow this cat, and the fellow comes inside. So you look first, where's the cat? Where is it? So at some point, if I can't find a cat, there's a sense, oh, there's no the cat. So I'm checking everywhere, there's no cat. And then in the end, if I can't find it, there's a sense, no cat. What happens in that moment when I can't find the cat? Get a sense. First, you need to look for it, of course. You need to, where's the cat? Oh, it's not here. It's not there. It's not over there. It's not up here. So in the end, if you don't find it, oh, there's no cat. There's this thought, no cat, absence of cat. So when you have certainty with regard to that, so how does this appear? It's just an absence appears to the mind. This is how it is. So with regard to the self, I start looking for the self. Where's the self? Where's the self? And there's the absence of just the self. So what does that mean? So actually, what am I realizing now? The lack of inherent existence of the self. So here, there's no cat, there's really no cat. So here I realize the non-existence of the cat. But that's so here the way it appears to the mind, that's similar. But here we're saying the non-existence of the cat. In the other case, we're saying not the non-existence of the self, but the lack of inherent existence of the self. So we're not saying the absence of the cat is emptiness. That would be absurd to say, well, no, the absence of cat is emptiness. Then it would be really easy to realize emptiness if the absence of cat were emptiness. Okay, so with the lion's roar of emptiness, all pronouncements are frightened. Wherever such speakers reside, their emptiness lies in wait. So 52. So the lion's roar. So the lion's roar is like something that all other animals are scared of. So that's the speech of the Buddha. So the Buddha's roar of emptiness. So all pronouncements are frightened. All these philosophers who say that existence, phenomena exist truly, they're frightened. Wherever such speakers reside, their emptiness lies in wait. So wherever this explanation is given on emptiness, then emptiness lies in wait. Then 53. To whom consciousness is momentary, to them it cannot be permanent. So if the mind is impermanent, how could it be inconsistent with emptiness? So when we say, do phenomena exist inherently or not, what is the basis? What is consciousness? So is the consciousness, so this is the main kind of doubt we have. Is the consciousness the person, and is the consciousness, does it exist inherently or not? So first of all, consciousness is momentary. It changes all the time, so it cannot be permanent. So the mind is changing. Because its mind is changing, it's momentary. So this clear and knowing entity, or this clear and entity aspect of the mind, sometimes it connects to affliction, sometimes it's not connected not connected with afflictions. Then sometimes you sleep, the mind sleeps, sometimes the mind doesn't sleep. So there are different kind of situations that the consciousness or the mind changes depending on what it is affected by. So it changes. So there's not only coarse change, there's also very subtle change from moment to moment. So if the mind is impermanent, how could it be inconsistent with emptiness? So because it is impermanent, it doesn't exist inherently. It shows that it doesn't exist inherently because it is impermanent. So in the Chitta Madra school, though they say that consciousness is impermanent, but they still say that the mind exists truly. But if you say that the mind exists impermanent, that actually shows that it lacks inherent existence. There's no contradiction. You're saying that if it's impermanent, it has to exist truly, or it has to exist inherently. That's what some philosophers say. So they say, they talk about the foundational consciousness, because they say the foundation consciousness is the self, because it's this truly existent entity. But that's actually, from a Prasangika school point of view, that's contradictory. So therefore, if it's impermanent, it must lack inherent existence. It's not inconsistent with emptiness. In brief, if the Buddhas uphold the mind to be impermanent, how would they not uphold that it is empty as well? That's 54. So the Buddha says that the mind is impermanent. So likewise, it is selfless. How could they not uphold that the mind is also selfless? Because it is impermanent. Then 55, from the very beginning itself, the mind never had any intrinsic nature. It is not stated that that an entity which possesses intrinsic existence somehow lacks this. So it never has an intrinsic nature. It's not like sometimes it exists intrinsically. No, it always lacks intrinsic existence. So it is not stated here that an entity which possesses intrinsic existence somehow lacks this. So this is either it exists inherently or it doesn't. So both is impossible. Something cannot be both intrinsically existent and non-intrinsically existent. 56, if one asserts this, one abandons the locus of selfhood in the mind. It's not the nature of things to transcend one's own intrinsic nature. So when we say that it's not the nature of things to transcend one's own intrinsic nature, so when we say the mind is the self, so it's being the self, that can be abandoned by reasoning, that can be overcome by reasoning, because the mind lacks inherent existence. But the mind, that's actually the nature of the mind to lack inherent existence. Not existing truly is the nature of the mind. So the mind has the nature of lacking true existence. We're not saying that something... So actually, we're not saying that something is beyond its own nature. We're not saying that. But anyway, there'll be examples later on. So to transcend one's own intrinsic nature. So one has one's own nature. No one is saying that something has not its own nature. It's not the nature of things that is abandoned. 57, just as the sweetness is the nature of molasses and heat the nature of fire, likewise we maintain that the nature of all phenomena is emptiness. So for instance, sweetness is the nature of molasses. So therefore we say molasses is always sweet. If it was not the nature of molasses to be sweet, then it wouldn't always be sweet. There is no molasses that is not sweet. So that's the nature. So this is not contradictory. This is definitely the nature. Conventionally, is the nature. And the nature of fire is heat. Therefore, so we're not abandoning that. We're not saying that the nature of fire is not heat. Likewise, we maintain that the nature of all phenomena is emptiness. So molasses is that which is sweet. Is there molasses? Is there sour molasses? No, actually molasses, we call molasses that which is sweet. This kind of black yellowish kind of substance. Or are we talking about the sugar cane itself? So nowadays you break it, so it's like a bamboo stick, and then you can actually suck out the kind of liquid inside. So it's made of this. So that's molasses. This kind of sticky kind of substance that is sweet, and there's no molasses that is not sweet. 58. When one speaks of emptiness as the nature of phenomena, one in no sense propounds nihilism. By the same token, one does not propound eternalism either. So the Prasangika school said nothing exists inherently. And still they describe karma, the law of karma. So if someone were to say that the Prasangika has fallen into the extreme, then the response is that I'm free from the two extremes. I'm not saying that the phenomena don't exist. I'm not saying that there's no nature of things, but I'm saying that phenomena don't exist inherently. So I'm saying that a vase, for instance, has a nature. So in English it's very difficult, actually. There's a word game here. So it's like we're actually saying that phenomena do not exist by way of their own nature, but they have a nature. So instead of using the word intrinsically existent, another word is to say phenomena don't exist by way of their own nature, but they have a nature. So I'm not saying that phenomena don't have a nature. If they didn't have a nature, it would have fallen into the extreme of nihilism. But I'm saying phenomena do not exist by way of their own nature, which is why I've not fallen into the extreme of eternalism. So a vase, for instance, is not permanent. It's not permanent. It doesn't exist truly. So that's why I don't propound eternalism. So, for instance, the law of karma is permanent, or the self is permanent. I'm not saying that. I'm not propounding eternalism. I'm not saying phenomena exist truly and permanently. So, with regard to the different terminology, so if we talk according to the Prasangika school, the law of karma works, and samsara functions. So all this works. So phenomena exist, but it doesn't exist intrinsically. So we talk about someone who cycles in samsara. Everything exists. There's a person who cycles in samsara. There's samsara. But then on the other hand, the Heart Sutra says there's no I know, you know, knows. So for another person, when they hear this, they would think the Prasangika school are really weird. They're totally contradictory. Sometimes they say this exists, karma exists, and so forth. But then the Heart Sutra says there's no I know, you know, knows, and so forth. But this is not what it means. Here we're not saying that nothing exists. We're saying phenomena don't exist inherently, or they don't exist by way of their own nature. So how do they exist? So now, how do they exist? So on the basis, on independence, on karma, we are reborn in samsara and so forth on the conventional level. So here 59, it says starting with ignorance and ending with aging. So these are the 12 links. All processes are processes that arise from the 12 links of dependent origination. We accept them to be like a dream and an illusion. So it's like an endless cycle. So ignorance giving rise to karma and so forth. So I, Prasangika, so me here, Nagarjuna, I'm saying they're like a dream or like an illusion. So I accept them to be like a dream and an illusion. They appear to exist truly, but they don't exist truly. I'm not saying that phenomena exist truly, but they still perform a function. So this function is merely labeled. It's merely designated. So because it's merely designated, so how can we say there's a function? So for instance, in a dream, so when we dream, while we have a dream, so we perceive elephants and horses and a garden. So we dream when we dream at that time. So whatever appears to the mind, for instance, elephants and so forth, is it merely labeled? Yes, it's merely labeled. It's just an appearance to the mind. It doesn't exist. There's no garden there. We're just dreaming about it. It's merely designated by conceptual mind. But we may like it. It looks pretty. We're happy when we see this beautiful garden. And sometimes when there's an elephant and when there's a lion and so forth and a snake, we are scared. So it's similar. So just like in the dream. Not just that. Also, when we say something performs a function. So when we don't analyze things, when we don't engage in ultimate analysis, so when we eat food, we accumulate negative karma, positive karma. I benefit you, you benefit me. I engage in actions so that I won't suffer and I'll be happy. So we do all these functions, we engage in certain activities. So we engage in activities, things that help us, things that harm us. Sometimes suffering comes, sometimes there's suffering, sometimes there's happiness. So this happens, but when we analyze it really, if we really look for it, it's like something concrete there. Is there something very concrete, some essence that performs this function? This cannot be found. So this is where we apply correct reasoning here. Because phenomena don't exist inherently. So phenomena not existing by way of their own nature, that can be found. That can be understood on the basis of ultimate analysis, depends on logical reasoning. So it can be understood. It can be understood. So if we were to say that phenomena exist truly, that would be in contradiction. That would be contradicted by a lot of other facts. It would be contradicted by reality. So even if phenomena don't exist truly, even if they don't exist inherently, still they perform functions. We can see that there are certain activities, certain actions. You can do something, I can do something to you, you do something to me. So it's our own experience through this experience. So for instance, if I beat you, you'll have pain. So from our own experience, we can know that they exist. We don't need to apply any, we don't need to give reasonings for that. If I beat you, it hurts you. Why does it hurt? Give me a reason why. That's just nature. We don't need to analyze that. So when I eat, then I'll be full at some point. I'll be full. So all this. So why will I be full when I feed food? We don't need to really analyze that. So whatever we do, whatever you do, whatever I do, whatever you do, all these objects that appear to us, we can say they exist. We can perceive them. We can experience them. They harm us or they benefit us. So from that point of view, we can say they exist. Just from that point of view, we say they exist. There is no other way in which they exist. There's no other form of existence that they need. So therefore, the 12 links, they're like a dream or like an illusion. So when we say they're like dreams or like an illusion, so when we dream, for instance, I talked about this earlier. So while we dream, also in other situations. So to give you another example. So usually we say, so when you build a house, for instance, when you build a building, so you're having different rooms, 3 or 4 rooms. So if all the rooms are the same, they all look the same. So the person who builds the house, so whether it's a father of a family, so this is the room of the parents. This is the room for the one child, and the third room is the room for. So one is for the son, and the other one is for the daughter, and then the fourth room is the room for the uncle. So if we were to now designate these different rooms, so it's the same. They look all the same, especially when you're building the room. When you're building the house, the rooms still all look the same. So this is the parents' room, this is the son's room, and so forth. So after we've made the room, so for instance, the room in which the uncle is going to stay. So now this is the room for the. So just because it was designated as the uncle's room, that's why it becomes the uncle's room. So it performs the function of an uncle's room. So everyone else will not go into that room, only the uncle will go into the room. But it's actually just designated from the side of from the nature of the house, from the side of the house, the rooms will all look the same. So it's merely labeled, it's merely designated, having decided this is the uncle's room, and now it performs the function of an uncle's room, because only the uncle stays in there, no one else has. Is it a little bit clearer now? So for instance, one person, if you take one person, so everyone can recite the prayers, but not everyone will be the umze, not everyone will be the chanting master. So for instance, in the monastery, you always have a umze, always have a chanting master. So and also you need like a lobe, and you need like an acharya, so someone who tells everyone else what to do, like looks after the younger monks. So if no one, so they all have to have, of course, certain qualities, but if no one designates this person, if no one gives them the position of umze, then they won't perform the actions of an umze. So only after they've been designated to be the new umze, then they act as the umze, or likewise the person who oversees some of the monks, some of the living quarters. Again, unless this person is designated, this person will not perform these actions. So then this person won't be this overseer. So isn't it a little bit, do you get a sense that because things are designated in a certain way, they function in that way? Therefore, phenomena don't exist inherently. So phenomena cannot exist truly. That will be contradicted by logic. It's not in accordance with, so truly existing inherently, it's not in accordance with reality, and logic will contradict that. So the phenomena exist, we can perceive them. Our experience, we can know through our experience, we can experience the things that do exist. But inherent existence, that's what we refute. That is contradicted by logic. So because it logically doesn't make sense, we can say it doesn't exist. But that doesn't mean I exist, you exist, and houses exist. I'm not saying that I don't exist, you don't exist, houses don't exist. We can all know that these objects exist. I can see you, you can see me, we can see a house and so forth. We can stay in a house, we can experience the house. And that way we say phenomena exist. A building exists, so we know this, we experience the building, we use the building. Therefore we say it exists. So how it really exists, we don't need to give a lot of reasons here. We can just say it exists. But in inherent existence, that's different. That we cannot be posited because it's in contradiction with reality. Then 60, this wheel with 12 links rolls along the road of cyclic existence. Outside this deck cannot be sentient beings experiencing the fruits of their deeds. So when we say the 12 links, so cycling within the 12 links, on the basis of that, we label sentient beings. That which experiences the 12 links on the basis of that, we label sentient beings, but outside of that, we cannot talk of as sentient beings. So there's also nothing else outside of the 12 links that experiences the fruits of their deeds. So how we're recycling, it's like existence, psychic existence. 61, just as independence upon a mirror, a full image of one's face appears. The face did not move onto the mirror, yet without it, there's no image. So for instance, when you have a reflection of a face in a mirror, so it's not like it's been added onto the mirror. It's not that it's added there, that it was actually put there. So it's just natural that a mirror reflects a face. So likewise, sentient beings, it's not like sentient beings are actually put in their next life. It's not like there's like they're kind of inserted somewhere. No, it's just this mind continues on. This mind continues on. This continuum of consciousness goes on to the next life and depends on karma and so forth. We're reborn. 62. Likewise, aggregates recompose in a new existence, yet the wise always understand that no one is born in another existence, nor does someone transfer to such an existence. So it's this being who will then continue on, which will transfer. So this object here, for instance, it's not like that this object unchangeably will be set there. So actually I've transferred this object. So actually when I have an impermanent object and I put it on the other side, then I transfer it. So it's not like something is transferred. It's not like there's a transference really in the sense of rebirth. It's really just this mind that leaves the body and the mind is changing and it enters another body. So it's not this transfer that someone puts this person somewhere else. 63. In brief, from empty phenomena arise. Age and karma, fruits and their enjoyer. The conqueror taught these to be only conventional. So this is similar to a verse in the entering of the middle way. So here the agent, that which accumulates karma, the fruits, that which experiences the karma and so forth, these only exist conventionally, they only exist nominally. So existing conventionally is that which we experience, they exist conventionally. 64. Just as the sound of a drum as well as shoot are produced from a collection of factors, we accept the external world of dependent origination to be like a dream and an illusion. So for instance, when we talk about a drum, making this the sound of a drum like a drum sound, so we need certain factors. We need something to like a stick that makes the sound, and we need the leather that is we have like a roundish kind of vessel. On top of that you have the leather that is tightly bound around it. So there are a lot of factors that have to be complete in order to be able to make a sound with a drum. So you need this kind of stick that beats the drum. And on the basis of all these factors, you need to have a person, you need something that is beaten, and then you without this movement of the hand, you won't be able to make the sound of a drum. So all these objects coming together, therefore you have the sound of a drum. You have the result that's the sound of a drum. So many causes and conditions come together. But maybe okay, you so probably also need oxygen. So without oxygen or without oxygen, space and so forth, you wouldn't be able to beat a drum. So also when you plant a seed, in order for a sprout to arise, you need all these different factors. You need soil, you need a fertilizer, you need warmth, you need water, you need someone to look after the seeds and so forth. On the basis of that, then something arises. So internal objects, you have internal objects, you have external objects. So they're all like dreams and an illusion. So external objects are like the seed and so forth. So they arise and dependence on many causes and conditions, or the drum, and then the internal factors as well. Can there be sound if there's no ear consciousness? Without an ear consciousness, can there be sound? Could sound exist without an ear consciousness existing? If there were no ear consciousness, so can we say because there's sound, therefore there must be an ear consciousness? Not just that, but for instance, when we say the mind is like a continuum without beginning or end. So we can't really distinguish. So it's all this continuum. So for instance, when we take the continuum of a sprout, for instance, when it arises, so a sprout is just a sprout for some time. It's not like it doesn't have a continuum that is beginningless and endless. But actually, the continuum, as a sprout, there's a beginning, but as the continuum itself, as a physical object, has no beginning and no end. So it's a bit like a wave in an ocean. Sometimes it's a sprout, and sometimes it's something else. So, like the wave in an ocean, it goes up, it goes down. So a sprout, for instance, the sprout actually always, the continuum always goes on and always existed and will always exist. So this the physicality as a physical object, it's always existed and will always exist. So sometimes it arises as a sprout, but then it grows bigger, then it becomes again a seed, and then again it grows into something else. So basically, when we talk about physical objects, there's no beginning and no end. And the same is true for consciousness. So the mind is not always born, it's not aging and not getting sick and so forth. We're talking about just a continuum that's always there, has no beginning and no end. So this clear knowing entity called the mind or consciousness. So we can't, this doesn't come into existence. That basic characteristic doesn't come into existence, doesn't go out of existence. The mind is always clear and knowing. So is there really, can we say it has come into existence? The mind, of course, the body is different on the basis of which the mind exists. So sometimes it's this body, another body. So on the basis of the elements of father and mother. So the ovum and the seed from the father. So on the basis of that, you have a body, and the consciousness is connected to different bodies. But the mind itself, the consciousness itself, its basic nature doesn't disappear, has always been there, will always exist. So this is what 64, what we're saying. 65. That phenomena are born from causes can never be inconsistent with fact. Since the cause is empty of cause, we understand to be empty of origination. So the cause itself, even though it doesn't exist inherently, it exists as a cause, but it doesn't exist by way of its own nature as a cause, because it's independent on an effect, and depends on an effect, it's a cause. So likewise, for instance, a son or a daughter, they're in relation to their parents, their son and a daughter. So you couldn't have one without the other. There's mutual dependence. Then verse 66, the non-origination of all phenomena is clearly taught to be emptiness. So here, emptiness, the lack of inherent existence. So what are phenomena here? So what is this? In brief, the five aggregates are denoted by the expression all phenomena. Here, the five aggregates, when we say all phenomena, we mean the five aggregates. 67, when the ultimate truth is explained as it is, the conventional truth is not obstructed. So actually, when we talk about the ultimate truth, there's no contradiction to the conventional truth. They don't contradict each other. Both exist equally, independent of the conventional. So if we understand cause and effect and so forth, then we overcome the extreme of nihilism. So this is what it said earlier. So the five aggregates. So when we talk about the five aggregates, the conventional, that refers to the conventional. But it doesn't harm the ultimate truth, because they're not contradictory. Independent of the conventional, no ultimate truth can be found. So they exist of one nature. They are one nature, the conventional truth, the ultimate truth are one nature. They depend on each other. So it's the emptiness. Here we talk about emptiness as the ultimate truth. So the nature of ultimate truth, that is conventional. That's the conventional truth. So the two truth, without one, you can't have the other. So the ultimate truth doesn't exist without a conventional truth, and the conventional truth doesn't exist without an ultimate truth. So this is like impermanent and product. So for instance, in Tibet, emptiness, some would say that emptiness is not the same nature, is not of a different nature. Some philosophers would say that in Tibet. So they even say this nowadays. And Lama Tsongkhapa says that the true truth are not of a different nature. They are one nature. So they are one nature. When we say they are one nature, the true truth. So this is not ultimately the case. So it's not ultimate. They're not ultimately of one nature because nothing exists ultimately. But conventionally, they're of one nature. So Nagarjuna, what Nagarjuna says, that is accepted everywhere. So here, just as produced and impermanent, that's what it says here. So product and impermanent are one nature. So the convention is taught to be emptiness. The emptiness itself is the conventional. One does not occur without the other, just as being produced and impermanent. So the conventional is taught to be emptiness. So it's the nature. It's the nature. So as being of one nature, we're saying just as produced and impermanent. So when we say permanent and impermanent, for instance, they're different nature. They have a different isolate. They have a different isolate, but they're of one nature. So when we say this is impermanent, this is produced and impermanent are one nature. Sorry, whatever is impermanent is also produced. Whatever is produced is also impermanent. So this is a produced object. So something we can point at. It's an impermanent. So this object is produced, therefore it's also impermanent. Whatever is impermanent is also produced. Sorry, previously I misspoke. I said permanent and impermanent. That was wrong. So just as being produced and impermanent, these two are of one nature. It's impossible to say being produced is over here and being impermanent is over there. It's the same object. So if we cannot distinguish between two things from the point of view of their nature, are they identical? So for instance, the Vaibhashika or the Vaishashika, a non-Buddhist school, they say if something is of one nature, they have to be one. They cannot really distinguish that. So they would say that a phenomenon like that, there's when we say like if something is both produced and impermanent, then they're of one nature. So also in some philosophers would say if it's of one nature. So for instance, in the Pramanavartika, it explains that even the phenomena of the same nature, of the same substance, they're still different phenomena. So we apply different terminology because they were produced by causes and conditions. We say something is produced and something is impermanent because it changes moment by moment. Therefore, we say it's impermanent. So there's a different reason why we call something produced and impermanent, but then it cannot be separated. So something being produced, because something is produced by causes and conditions, it has to change moment by moment. So therefore, both have to exist together. Something can only be impermanent because it has been produced by causes and conditions, and the other way around. But we still think of it as different. We perceive it differently. That doesn't mean that there are different substances or a different nature. So for instance, if you take one person as an example, so this person is an expert, it's a scholar, or is the disciplinarian, for instance. So someone who disciplines people, so an expert or a scholar. Or vet, can't say that nowadays. So anyway, so the person who's part of this family, and this person is an expert, and this person is for instance, the person is called Tundup. So we say it's the disciplinarian Tundup and the scholar Tundup. And Tundup, who's part of this family. So there are three different ways to describe this person. So when we say this Töndup who's part of this family, or when we say this scholar Töndup, it's the same person. And when we say the disciplinarian, well, it's the same person. So actually, they're the same person. So these three kind of characteristics, these three ways to describe this one person Töndup. So they have no different substances. This is the same substances, same object. But still, when we talk about the disciplinarian Töndup or the disciplinarian Töndup or the expert or the scholar Töndup, they're not identical, but they're of one nature. Because some people know that he's the disciplinarian, but they don't know he's a scholar. And some people don't know he's a scholar, but he knows he's the disciplinarian, or the other way around. So there's different ways to perceive them. So the way different people perceive them, if there were one, you would have to perceive all these aspects of the person, but that's not the case. So therefore, when we talk about Töndup, the disciplinarian, Töndup, the scholar, they are of one nature, but they're not one. They are one substance, they're not one. They're not identical. So this is what this says here. It's not that important here, but it's still good to know. 68. 68. So just as being produced and impermanent. So when we take this lit out the cup, so this lit here, so it's from the point of view that it has arisen from causes and conditions. So it's a conventional phenomenon. From the point of view that it lacks inherent existence, from the point of view of the absence of inherent existence, that's what we say emptiness. So from the point of view of the fact that it arises from causes and conditions, we say it's a conventional truth. From the point of view of the lack of inherent existence, we say it's an ultimate truth. So on the basis of one phenomenon, we can say that both exist and they are of one nature. 69, the conventional arises from afflictions and karma arises from the mind. The mind is accumulated by the propensities. When free from propensities, it's happiness. So here, conventional, what we say is the phenomena that appear to us. So the external environment, sentient beings and so forth, that's called conventional. So that arises, it's in the nature of suffering, it's the nature of dukkha. So it arises from afflictions and karma. It's not like so actually it's explained separately that the conventional arises from karma and karma arises from afflictions. That's how it's explained in some of the commentaries, but I don't think that's true. So when we say conventional arises from afflictions, here we talk about the conventional here is described as afflictions because we talk about the conventional, the samsaric world, and that is affliction. So here as affliction, not as a mind, but an affliction in another sense here. So when we say afflictions here, because it's in the nature of suffering, we say it's an affliction. So from that point of view, so the samsaric world, the conventional here, the samsaric world, that is in the nature of suffering. So it's an affliction. It's afflictive, and it has arisen from karma. And karma, so in this world, there's so many living beings, sentient beings, this place that we live in. So this is like our home, this world. So all sentient beings, they have been born here. They have arrived here. They've arrived here in this world. So that's in connection, that is in relation to karma. So it's because of so there needs to be a cause why sentient beings are born here. So that's because of karma. And karma comes from the mind, arises from the mind. The mind is accumulated by the propensity. So here the imprints. The mind, so So we accumulate all kinds of kind of karma. So that karma leaves imprints on the mind. So virtues and non-virtues. So the obstructions, the imprints from the afflictions and so forth. There's so many different imprints, so many different potentials there of these different ones. So the mind has come into existence as a result of past karma. So the present mind is the result of past karmic actions that were also accumulated by the past mind and so forth. So when we say the mind is under the control of the afflictions, so we may maybe benefit another person out of attachment, or when we harm another person out of attachment. Anyway, so when we accumulate karma, it's this mind, the mind that is controlled by attachment, that accumulates karma. And that mind is the result of previous types of mind, of the previous continuum that also accumulated karma. So on the basis of the extreme attitude that exaggerates the existence of things, attachment and so forth, on that basis or because of those, karma was accumulated and creates the present mind. So it's because of ignorance and the afflictions and so forth, other afflictions. So on the basis of that, the mind arises, the present mind arises. So if we really understand that, it's very profound actually. But I couldn't see this profundity here really, but basically it was difficult to express it. But anyway, mind accumulates karma. Mind is under the control of the afflictions. But where does the mind come from? It also comes from previous minds, from different imprints. And where did these imprints come from? They come from familiarity. So sometimes people say the familiarity itself, that is the imprint. So these imprints, they are that which created the present mind. So when free from propensities, it's happiness. So it's karma that created our present mind from these propensities, from these imprints, as a result of the afflictions. So the continuum of the mind that existed since beginning this time. Now, this present mind, so being under the control of the afflictions, of the cognitive obstructions, the extreme attitude and so forth, if we were to eliminate these propensities, all these imprints, so all these minds basically, so which here Rinpoche explained to be like this familiarity. If we overcome this familiarity, these afflictions and so forth, then we would experience happiness. So then it says, a happy mind is tranquil indeed. A tranquil mind is not confused. So the less propensities we have, the less imprints we have, the less ignorance there is. So here, a happy mind, a tranquil mind. What makes the mind non-tranquil? What confuses the mind? It's ignorance. Once the ignorance is gone, if there's no ignorance, if the defilement of the ignorance is gone, if that's gone, then it says to have no confusion is to understand the truth. If there's no ignorance, we understand the truth. So what does it mean here? So if our mind right now is under the control of afflictions, that's samsara. If we overcome the afflictions, if we realize emptiness, that's liberation. So as long as we hold on to a self, have attachment to the self, grasp at the self, then we'll have samsara. So by understanding the truth, one attains freedom. It's described as suchness and as the reality limit, as signlessness and as the ultimate truth. So the reality limit, the signlessness, all these are the ultimate truth here. As the supreme awakening mind, it's described also as the emptiness. So here we say the ultimate, like there's, for instance, we say it's the ultimate, it doesn't go further. A reality limit, that's the ultimate truth, or that's emptiness. So when we say like a limit, or we say the ultimate, it's like it doesn't go any further. So of course there are a lot of different types of suchness, a lot of different kinds of reality. For instance, impermanence, being produced, suffering, conventional truth, all these are truth, they're all realities, but the actual final reality is emptiness. So it's the reality limit in that sense. It's the ultimate truth. Signlessness. So conventional truth, you have a lot of perception. It's like this, it's like that. There are all these different differences. There are all these different characteristics. But when it comes to emptiness, there's no signless. It's their signlessness. They're not like it's like this, it's like that. It's all the same basically. And when we say meaning, for instance, so the ultimate, so here truth of the different types of truth, we say the ultimate truth. So the ultimate truth here, or the ultimate meaning here, as the supreme awakening mind, it's described also as the emptiness. So when we talk about the object, so that's suchness, the reality limit, signlessness, and the ultimate truth. And then the mind, what is the mind that perceives emptiness? That's ultimate bodhicitta. So it's the mind that realizes emptiness directly. That's the ultimate awakening mind. So it's a bit like we say that the ultimate, the mind that realizes emptiness directly is like pouring water into water. So the mind is so absorbed into emptiness, there's no sense of like the mind and its object. So the mind is non-dual, and it's like mind and object are like water being poured into water. So this supreme or this ultimate awakening mind, that is also described as the emptiness or as this ultimate mind, or in the nature of emptiness is sometimes described as the empty. So the mind that perceives emptiness, sometimes we apply the term emptiness also to that. So then verse 72, those who do not understand emptiness are no receptive vehicle for liberation. Such ignorant beings will revolve in the existence prison of 6 classes of beings. So without understanding emptiness, we will not be able to, we will not become liberated. So these 6 beings, the 6 classes of beings, they remain in the prisons of existence because of not realizing emptiness. So this is important because the root of samsara is the mind that grasps at self. So the mind that grasps at the self of phenomena and the self of phenomena of person, that grasps at the self of a person. So when we talk about grasping at the true existence of phenomena, so without realizing emptiness, so we don't understand selflessness, we don't understand emptiness, we cannot overcome samsara. So there's a lot of debate on that actually between the different philosophers, but so here we talk about emptiness that's free from all fabrications. So this was emptiness, and now conventional bodhicitta starts. So maybe we'll leave it here. So we have only 2 hours, so we've come to the end of the 2 hours.